back to the Laura Show. Today I have a special guest who you might recognize as a star of the TV show, The Real Housewives of Toronto. Joan, thank you so much for being with me today.
Oh, my pleasure.
Now,
I feel like that was like a moment in time 5 years ago.
I was going to say, that's such a snippet of your life because I've done some reading and reviewing about you, and that really doesn't do you justice. I feel like that might be where the audience knows you from, but I mean, you're up to so many things. You're big into philanthropy, mother of four, own your own business, fashion designer, used to be a model, producer, radio host, like all these things. And so I feel like we have a lot to unpack today because, like you said, the show is really just a small part. I'd like to take us back to the start, maybe, if you don't mind.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing your research because a lot of people just get fixated on one thing and they don't even know about the rest of it. So, you know, when you get older and you've had a lifetime of experiences, it's nice to build one to the next because you learn as you go along. So,
100%.
So all of those things have brought me to where I am today, wherever that is.
And like I said, that's just such a small part of what it is. And I think you're right. When people hear about people being on TV or on radio shows and things like that, it sounds sexy and it's exciting, but it really is just such a small part of who you are and what you're doing. Actually, the philanthropy is something that really kind of touched my heart and why I wanted to bring you on. So we'll get to that. I kind of want to know about you a little bit as a kid because I don't know much about your life prior to obviously you being on TV. Like, what was it like growing up for Joan? You're not from Toronto.
I'm from Saskatchewan. I'm from literally a town of 200 people. There was one street that had some pavement on it, but everything was dirt roads. My dad was a grain farmer. My mom was a retired nurse. We grew up in a very humble setting. I had so much love in my home, and that's what I thought was normal. There was a big sense of community and people really helping each other as much as possible. I mean, you're in the middle of the bald prairies. It's cold, there's snow, there's elements, and people did what they could to be together and to bond.
So it kind of makes you grow some thick skin, I guess, the cold, but real sense of community, it sounds like. What kind of student were you? Were you like a straight A student? Did we skip class?
Never skip class.
Yeah? Okay.
Where am I going to go?
I don't know. I'm sure small towns people can get into some trouble.
Yeah, no, never ever skip class.
Yeah.
Very good student, honor roll all the way through. I just like to always challenge myself. And why not? Like, what's the alternative to skip classes, and where's that going to get me?
So you sound like me. Sometimes, you have people who have very fascinating stories and they say, oh my God, I never went to class. It's amazing I passed high school. And that can sometimes really fuel an entrepreneurial spirit. So that's why I kind of always like to start with people's childhood because it's interesting. There's not one size fits all, right? It's not like everyone has the same upbringing and that's what causes them to do X, Y, Z. People kind of fall into place. I myself have had a lot of different careers. I'm 38 years old. I've probably had 4 or 5 careers already. I have school backgrounds that varies from nutrition to fashion to real estate. Have my master's. So I feel like your kind of background, maybe it pieces together when you go along, but what did you do after high school? When did you come to Toronto?
Oh gosh, when I think I was 14 and my aunt had a friend that was working at the Bay and she was organizing fashion shows. And so she asked me if I wanted to model in the fashion show. And it was like this world exploded that I knew nothing about.
So you were tall back then as well?
I was tall.
Okay,
I was thin, I was tall, I was fit. And
lucky.
It was just a stroke of luck and circumstance that I happened to know somebody that knew somebody and they needed people.
Yes.
So I did this fashion show, my first ever. I was terrified. I was probably terrible, but I absolutely loved it. And I thought, I like this industry. I want to do something like that. I didn't know what the industry was. I thought modeling was the key, but I didn't realize there's so many facets of it. So I would kind of use modeling as my way to step out into the world and then just figure it out. So after high school, I moved to Toronto. I enrolled in a university just as my backup plan, and I started working. I worked in restaurants. I had a job at a nightclub serving cocktails so that I could support myself while I was trying to figure out how to get a modeling career going.
Wow.
And honestly, I feel like if I had a mentor or like anyone that I could ask questions of. It would have been so much more of a straight line, but I zigzagged all over the place. But it kind of worked for me because I had other life experiences. I think every young person should work in a restaurant so they understand what that's worth. And they should support themselves somehow as much as they can. And they should juggle. I'm trying to get a career going and I'm in school. I've got this obligation and that obligation.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I talk to a lot of salespeople, small business owners, and there is a challenge to juggling a lot of things. And I think you're right. When you have those experiences when you're younger, I worked for the Bay as well. That's why when you said the Bay, I was like, oh my gosh, like I worked for their corporate office in fashion. And you're right, you have to juggle a lot of things, and the fashion industry is very fast-paced, right? And here you are coming from this small town. You probably are like, I don't know anyone. I'm moving to Toronto.
Yeah.
I'm paying my own way. You were scared to get into modeling. What do you think was kind of the thing that made you do it anyways? Because oftentimes fear can hold us back. But it sounds like you were scared, but you did it anyway. So what was that for you?
You know what? I had such a wonderful family. I feel like I had this security in knowing if I fell flat on my face and I failed miserably, I knew that they would just say, well, that's okay. You tried. You did your best. Come home. We still love you. It doesn't matter. So I had that security blanket. But I wanted to do it for me. I wasn't doing it for anyone else. This was just a goal I had because that was all I knew. That modeling was the only thing I was exposed to. But once I started working in it, then it's like, wow, I can do some acting, I can do commercials, I can do this or that. And then like I would be on set and I would just watch what people are doing and I would ask questions like, what are you doing? Like, what are you writing down? What you're looking at numbers on a camera. What does any of that mean? And I would just pick people's brains. And then I thought, okay, how am I gonna, instead of working in restaurants, how am I gonna get myself on set with some kind of a job? And I was always good at hair and makeup, and so I started being like, a PA, just a runner, coffee girl, and then I kind of worked my way into assisting hair and makeup, and then I worked my way into being the makeup person, and I just learned as I went along, and that slowly progressed me to producing. And then one day a director didn't show up, and so I had to interview somebody, and I started working on a big scale. Like I've produced things for NBA Entertainment and for the NHL and all kinds of corporations in Canada and the US. So I was doing that at the same time that I was still trying to get my own on-camera thing going. And somehow through the modeling acting world, I auditioned for a car show where they have the girl in the evening gown standing beside the car.
Yeah.
And somehow I just was really good at memorizing those very long technical scripts.
Okay.
That are very difficult. And I'm talking pages and pages and pages.
So like a photographic memory maybe, or just practice?
I just worked my butt off. And the first time you do it, it was so painful. I remember my mom saying like, this is impossible. And I'm like, no, but I have to do it. And so she would help me and I would just go through it over and over and over. And then the next gig like that I got it was a bit easier, and then it got a bit easier. And then I had my own tricks of how to make notes on the side of the page that I could actually visualize. So I don't know if that's what they call a photographic memory. I think for me it's repetition.
Right.
But then I started doing like speaking at trade shows all through the US, graphic shows, computer shows, printing shows, all across Canada. And that led me into a career as the morning anchor at the Weather Network, which led me into radio, which I'm still doing.
Now you
So
say
it's
led
been, like,
me into the
things-
career like it just kind of fell in your lap. I'm sure that wasn't the case. Like was this like, oh, there's an opportunity, I have to go for it, or did someone discover you kind of in a way? Like what was the path that you literally took? Because you have kids and obviously you speak to a lot of people, and I feel like maybe people today, they don't realize that it is such a path and that one thing door opens the door to another thing, and they want they come out of high school and they want to be a producer. They come out of university and they think that they should be producing a full-blown movie, or they should be on TV, and they don't realize no, you get coffee for people at first and you start really small. So was it something that you said, I'm going to go for that, or was it more like just doors opened and you took the opportunity when it came?
You know what? I never said no to anything. I always knew that somehow I would figure it out. Like in the day when I was doing this, everybody had those big, massive beta cams with the big beta tapes. And the DOP or somebody on one shoot was doing a film shoot, and he invited me to be there. I don't know even what it was called. But I pulled him aside and I said, I've never done this. I don't know this clapper loader thing. Like, how am I? And he just walked me through it. Here's what you need to know. And then, so the first time I did it, he's like, okay, good job. And then I just figured it out. So I would never say no. Like when I was doing makeup, I was key makeup on this B sci-fi film that I don't even know if they finished editing it. It wasn't great, let's just say that. But as makeup, I was doing a little bit of special effects, which I had never done before, like some cuts and bullet wounds, and I had to do a cancerous growth on this guy's head. And because he was on some weird planet, or I don't know what the premise was. But so I did it, I took my time, I had gone to the store, there was a place called Hiscott's at the time, and Mrs. Hiscott knew everything about makeup, and she's like, honey, here's what you need to do, here's the stuff you need to buy, here's how you work with it. She walked me through it. I took hours, created this beautiful cancerous growth on this guy's head. They put him on set, and they said, oh no, it's on the wrong side. Can you redo this in 15 minutes? And I was like, okay, what can I do? I'll do my best.
Right.
And so I took it off, I started over, and somehow it was even better. So I just was like, what is the alternative? Like I can freak out, or you just try and figure it out.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a real sense of curiosity with things as well, like asking those questions. Mentorship can be formal, but also very informal, right?
Yes.
So people around you, I always say, like, ask to get people coffee, get in the room one way or another, put your hand up, say, let me make that spreadsheet for you, or let me draft up that email for you, just to help someone so that you can get into the room, so that you can hear whatever conversations, because you're gonna cut your learning curve in half.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're on the Weather Network, and sorry, I don't know the sequence of events. So do you go from the Weather Network to being on the Real Housewives, or was there a whole bunch in between?
The Weather Network, I was only there for about 6 months. It's a hard gig. I was there, I had to be there like on camera at 3 in the morning and pre-record like a little couple things, and then wait for the show to go live at 6. So I'd be there full hair and makeup, like sleeping in the corner.
So what time did you wake up to get your hair and makeup done?
I tried everything. I tried staying up and then just sleeping after the show finished at 9 in the morning. Yeah. Or I tried going to sleep at dinner, or like I tried, it's really hard to get into that. So after that, I had a big break in radio. Someone recommended me, it was a person that worked at the Fan 590, so sports radio.
Yeah.
I'm not a sports expert at all, but they needed someone, I think, to do traffic.
Okay.
And their sister station was Easy Rock. And so that person introduced me to the people that were making decisions at Easy Rock and the Fan, because they were both owned by Telemedia. And I had a break. They gave me an opportunity to do these things called the Heartbeat Report. So I would drive around the city and I'd find interesting little things or events, and I would just do live reporting on it. And that was amazing, because I remember the first time I went live on the radio, my heart was pounding, my skin was all flush, I was sweating, and I was so fixated on that whole process of what was happening that the report was sort of looked after itself. And then the next time I did it, it was still so exciting, but a little bit less. And then eventually I found this balance in it, and just really, really enjoyed the process of it.
Content nowadays, I mean, everyone talks about the reason to do content for your business, become an influencer, do content just so you're relevant, whatever it is. But I work with a lot of people, there's so much fear, right? We put up a lot of armor to protect ourselves throughout our whole lives, and now here people are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and I'm telling them to go on camera, and it's very difficult for them. They get red, they get flushed, they mess up their speech, they feel like they need to script it. Was it difficult for you, like, as well? Like, obviously that moment, maybe you felt like you were a little out of place, but was literally being on camera hard for you?
You know, it's all about being prepared. At the Weather Network, I was the host. Other people were doing the weather and the traffic and all of those things. So I wasn't trained in any of those things. But if there was a technical problem where, okay, let's cut to Neil outside for the weather, and then we had a problem, I'd have like 2 minutes to kind of tap dance and nothing to talk about. So if I had learned more about his job, it would have been easier for me. So I think my learning there is to always ask questions and never limit yourself and insist. If you say, you know what, this has happened twice in this show, it makes me feel very uncomfortable. Go to the top. Go to the biggest person on the ladder that you can get to and explain yourself without complaining. Just say, this is how we can make it better.
So with a solution, come with a solution.
With a solution.
And I imagine at that time, I mean, I don't know, is that a pretty male-dominated industry?
Not the Weather Network.
Okay.
No, it wasn't. I didn't even think about that. That wasn't a thing.
Well, that's good.
Yes.
Way to go, the Weather Network. Well, obviously things have changed a lot. I'm curious, at this time while you were doing all these things, you're married, you start having some children, right, along the way. Were you juggling a lot? Was it overwhelming at times? I'm sure it was.
Well, I was doing radio when I got married. I loved my gig in radio. It was great. But the hours weren't great. I would be either filling in and working all the time or doing the weekends or the evenings or the early mornings. So that's not really conducive to, my husband's an executive. He's away a lot. Somebody needs to be home. So I kind of gave up a bit of that, but I still kept producing because I could do it from home. I loved doing it. I could be on set when I wanted to. So that was kind of the transition. And 2 of my kids are stepkids, but they were very little when I came on the scene. So that's great. And then we had R2. So I took those years that I needed. And by the time I was stepping back into things, the whole industry had changed. Nobody was using those great big beta cams anymore. Everything had gone digital. And I realized, okay, I don't know this stuff. I wasn't at the top of the game like I was 3 or 4 years before. So that was a big transition. So I thought, okay, now what? Now how do I do this? Do I go back into producing? Do I step back as an on-camera person or a voice person? And that was the road that I chose.
That's interesting. I have a lot of female friends who, they've taken a step back from their careers, mid to late 30s now. They've got 1 to 5 kids, whatever the case may be. And, a lot of them now are toying with that concept of going back to work and if they should, if they shouldn't, worrying if their life will feel fulfilled if they do or feel fulfilled if they don't. Any advice you have for them? Was it hard for you and your family in making that decision where you're both really busy, but you're still both career oriented?
Well, one thing that was very important to me is to show my children that I was an independent person and I was a creative person and I was still following my dreams no matter how old I was. And even though they were obviously always my priority, it's important for them to see me being a strong independent person. So I didn't want to just become, the wife or the mom. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but for me, I wanted to continue to develop, and I still do. To be perfectly honest, I don't need to work. I don't need to do anything. I love doing things like this. I love speaking to other people, hearing their stories, sharing what I've learned, and a lot of times I find people don't listen. They don't get the jewels that people have to share. So, it's great you're doing this to help support other people through their journey.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be learned, right, through other people's stories. You also start to realize that people have similar stories. People go through similar struggles at different points in their lives. And people also change and they grow in very different ways. Like sometimes the friends that you have in your 20s, then all of a sudden you're 40 and you realize we don't even have that much in common anymore, right? So you start to adapt, and I think I always look at it from the perspective of what am I going to feel the most regretful? I'll probably regret lots of things. Well, hopefully not regret. Maybe that's a little strong word, but what am I going to say to myself like, darn, I wish I tried. And I oftentimes, when it comes to saying a podcast or starting a new business, I remember always thinking like, yeah, all these things could go wrong. And trust me, lots of people out there in the world will tell you all the things that could go wrong. And like how you're going to have egg on your face, or you're going to start again, or you're going to waste all this money. But all those things scare me less than the thought of, oh my God, what if I wake up when I'm 90 and I'm like, I can't believe I never tried. Is that kind of what motivates you as well?
Totally. I love that you said that.
Yeah.
And people, like if someone's watching, they're thinking, oh, I'm terrible on camera, I'm too nervous, I can't do this, I look stupid, I sound weird. Everybody goes through that. Practice, just get on there when nobody's watching, just record yourself, see what you can do, change the lighting, change your hair, maybe stand differently, maybe put the camera at a different angle, just try different things until you start to feel more comfortable. And it does take a lot of time. Everybody goes through it. It just looks so easy when you're watching someone else.
Well, that's what it is, because they see you now on camera and they're like, oh, what a natural, right? And maybe they're watching me and they're seeing, well, Laura doesn't look as natural as that. But, when I had another guest on, I was the one more experienced. And so you also realize like you're in different degrees of your journey. Mm-hmm. We're all going along. And oftentimes people will say, well, it's easy for you, Laura, because you love being on camera. I'm like, I didn't like being on camera. I did get nervous. I still to this day find it very hard to watch any clips that come back from my team. They give me clips. Like, I don't love watching myself. I can still pick myself apart, but it's about doing it anyways and kind of just saying like, I know that this is good for me. I know that when I get over this, there's so much peace on the other side. And I think the older I get, and maybe, I'm sure you've learned this lesson too, when you stop caring what other people are thinking, or the more you get to that place, it's like, oh, you're such peace, inner peace, right?
It's a personal thing. It's, you set yourself up with a big challenge, which is hard, but then you get this satisfaction on the other side, which is so amazing. So that for me is a bit of the adrenaline that I chase. So I'm always finding like, okay, what do I want to do now? What's next? What am I going to find interesting?
So is that what led us to the show? Are we kind of at that stage in your career now where maybe this opportunity came up and you said, I'm gonna do that? Like, what kind of led you to putting your hand up for that?
Oh boy! Oh wow! I'd done movies parts before. I've done like a ton of commercial and all that stuff. I had never done reality television. To be honest, I hadn't watched any Housewives. I didn't know anything it was about. I thought, I can do this. This would be great.
You never watched any of the shows before? So
I never did. They made us watch. They sent us 1 or 2 links, and the shows, of course, that they sent us were very tame. I really had no idea what I was getting into. And they had kind of scoured the city. Like, they talked to so many people and everybody was like, oh, I'm on the show, I'm on, and then at the end, none of those people were on the show. But I knew this was something I wanted to do. It's a hard show to do, but it's interesting with the Housewives franchise. It came with millions of dedicated followers and viewers from around the world. So it was like an instant thing that I knew. I was aware of what would happen, but I really I wasn't even on Instagram before that.
Okay.
So all of a sudden my phone is exploding. People are reaching out to me. People are offering to dress me or to send me. Like, I was like, I can't process
kind of turned your life upside down. It's interesting because you had been on camera before.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people knew of you. I'm sure when you walked around, people knew who you were because they'd seen you on doing the Weather Network and everything like that. But then all of a sudden, like, this level of fame, I guess. Tell me a little bit more. Was that like, did you like it? Did you not like it?
There was. I remember when the show first, when they were doing all the promos. I had my kids with me after school. I picked them up. We went to the grocery store, and there was some guy behind me saying, "That's Joan Kelley Walker, everybody!" And he was like announcing it to the whole store, and half the people were like, "Who is this guy?" And half of them were like, "Oh my God." Or going through an airport, the girl would check me in and then say, "Oh, I'm such a big fan. I love the show. I love you on the show." Mm-hmm. Like, that was the part, because I had actually written a letter to myself before we started saying, here's who I am. Here's who I want to continue to be. Here's how I think I need to be to be myself, and I want this to be a positive experience. And in a show like that, they're trying to stir up drama, and there was some things, and they take a lot of liberty in editing things. So you never quite know what to expect. So there's a lot of nerves. But all in all, for me, I met some incredible people through that journey and afterwards, and it did open a lot of new doors for me.
Yeah.
So like on this weekend, I'm co-hosting the International Fashion Encounter, and I wouldn't have met those people otherwise. So that's been like a 5-year relationship now, and just a lot of other opportunities to work with different designers and wear their clothing on different red carpets and things like that.
So the show, remind me, was it one season?
We did one season.
Yes.
Why didn't it get geared up?
Yeah, why didn't it get brought on for another one? Because I did watch it, so I am a fan of that franchise. Curious as to, like, I was upset. I was like, why aren't we doing more?
They never told us.
Okay.
We were geared up, and we had shooting schedules and things all prepared, and it was really, really a last minute thing. And they didn't cancel the show; they just put us on hiatus.
Oh, okay.
So I think there might have been some legal things happening in the background.
Hiatus is almost worse, though, if you don't mind me saying, because like
don't
now you're kind of
know.
holding on to it for a little bit. I'm sure you were like, well, is it happening? Is it not happening? How do I move on with my life?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Were you disappointed? Or were you
the
kind of
first season, I was just trying to figure it out. Like I needed to just observe and exist and kind of get through it. And then I would have taken a bit more aggressive way with the second season once I had my head in the game. But the first season was I was quite reserved, and I was myself. So
you came across great, though.
Well,
you should be very proud about how you came across, because I think those shows they don't bring out the best in people, generally speaking.
Yes.
And you came across lovely, like someone I would love to have a conversation with someday.
Thank you.
Okay, so the show doesn't move on, but opened a lot of doors. Is that kind of when you decided to start your clothing line, or was that earlier?
So that was one of the things that came out of it. And I kept doing, like, for 15 years at TIFF, I had this other gig called Red Carpet Diary, where I was on the carpets interviewing the movie stars. Like I did that all the way through Housewives, and people were like, are you on this side of the carpet or that side? So it was kind of interesting that way. But everything led to other opportunities, like the Walmart thing.
Yes.
We had a licensing deal. It was a royalty thing. So this manufacturer would use my label in their garments that they were selling to Walmart. And then the profit that I got, I donated 100% of it to charities.
What made you decide to do that? Walmart's pretty big. You probably knew there could be some good money here. Why the charity route?
Well, my family were already supporting a lot of different charities, and I think it is one of the most important things to do from a personal, emotional point of view. I have had the very good fortune of doing extensive travel with different charities around the world, and to be so blessed to be able to come home and to tell people about it. So I've seen it. Like if we're going to give a big donation to something in Mozambique or something, I want to go and see it. So that's a rare opportunity.
Yeah, you actively put yourself in the situation, and it's not just money; it's also about time and giving back. Were you kind of raised that way as a kid, or was this just?
I think it comes down to the community thing. I think. People saying, oh, I've got extra tomatoes, here, take them. Oh, you have extra cucumbers, here, or shoveling. It's an older person that lives next door, go shovel their walk. Like people just did that kind of thing. It was just normal. And nowadays, a lot of people don't even know who their neighbors are. So I think it was part of it. And also by the time I met my husband, he was starting to work with World Vision in particular, and that was one that I've worked with extensively over the years.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote some of the charities down here. Breakfast Club of Canada, World Vision Ambassador, CNIB Foundation, so that's for the blind. I was reading up United Way Mental Health Impact Fund. I mean, how do you pick? There's so many charities out there. How do you pick what's important?
United Way, Ben Lefebvre Mental Health Impact Fund, that was a friend of ours, a very dear friend who took his life. And everybody so devastated. And so that was my reaction, like, what can I do? I need to do something. I can't just sit here. And so I founded that.
You've I mean, you have so many, like you have awards, you have this business, you're part of all the philanthropy. Is there a moment in your life where you kind of felt like, I've made it, or this is what I was striving for? Is there something, a moment in time that you feel it was like, this was what I was working for?
I don't know. You know, sometimes I wonder, do I ever get there? I don't know, because I'll do something, I'm like, okay, well, that was a big goal and really great, but now what's next? And I still am doing that. So now that I'm this age, I'm being very mindful on how I'm spending my time and the people that I'm surrounding myself with, because those things are important. It's better not to spread yourself too thin, and it's better to be mindful of protecting yourself as much as you can. So I don't know if I'll ever get there.
Yeah, and as I feel like, you know, when I was younger, call it 10 years ago, when I got into real estate, you know, you have this number in your head, like this is what I want to make. And it's a dollar figure, right? And then you make it, and then you're like, okay, now I want to make more, and I want to make more. And then there is a point, I feel at least, where you're like, okay, I guess it's not about the money, because it just keeps becoming a moving target. And you start realizing like that's not necessarily the epitome of success. Maybe it's a title, or for me it was
It's a tangible goal, though.
Yeah.
So you need some tangible things to, you know, for benchmarks and for goals. And then you have to really analyze what are the other things that are fueling me to keep doing this.
Yeah, and maybe why the money. Like money is a good indicator, right? Because it's a fair playing field. We all you can count it or not. And so you kind of know where your benchmark is, right? Like it's hard to determine success, I should say, using any other scale. But I definitely think the older I get, the less it has to do about money. And the more I've realized, like, why did I want the money in the first place? Was it to buy fancy things, to impress people? And also the older you get, you kind of leave that behind, right? And so for me, you know, I haven't gone down the charity route myself, but I keep talking about it. And like, I know people talk, you talk, but it's about action, about actually doing something. And I get the feeling that it's in that giving back that you really start to feel like this was the whole point. This was the whole purpose. Do you feel that way?
Oh, for sure, for sure. I just wanted to touch on something you had just mentioned about charity. It's not necessary that you have to just, here's a bunch of money. I mean, that's kind of the easy way to do it. There's a lot of other ways to be supportive. You can learn about a charity, because there's so many charities out there that are doing such specific work that nobody really knows what's happening. You can share that information, you can volunteer, you can spend your time, you can do whatever. There's a lot of ways that you can insert yourself into that. And I do think we're all up here and we're all rushing and we're all busy and we're all important and all those things. But I think when you do work with a charity, you see the essence of people. And I heard someone giving a speech the other day, and they were talking about how we label each other. Like, you know, my husband is an engineer and a CEO, and we have these titles. Her point in her talk was about turning it around so that we're saying, my husband is one of the most generous people that I know, and talking about the traits instead of those accomplishments. And that's how I've been trying to see the world lately. And I think that's what happens. Like, I found myself on a plane going to the DRC by myself. I'm flying to the DRC to meet people on the World Vision team for a water initiative thing that we had been supporting. And I remember just feeling like, okay, all that stuff, all the reasons why I'm so important or not, doesn't mean anything. What matters is helping these people get clean water. And it's very grounding, and it makes you appreciate things in a whole new way. And every opportunity I can speak about those experiences that I've had and the people that I've met and the impact that those small acts of kindness have, the way that it's improved people's lives, I always want to share those stories.
Yeah, I love that you said even working with a smaller charity, because there are some charities that get a lot of money, a lot of publicity. They have a machine running,
yes,
and they're doing important work. But there are so many like local charities, shelters that you can help support. that are just as meaningful and just as important. So if you're not sure, you can't do the money thing, but maybe you have some time, or maybe you can help mentor somebody, or maybe you can bring some type of value. Maybe your experience in life will help someone else. So, that's all part of giving back. I'm curious, what's next for you? Because it sounds like you're a big dreamer, and you're always up for a new challenge. Is there anything that you're kind of hoping to accomplish now? Because the average person would look and be like, she's got it all. She has everything. What's next?
Well, I have a lot of irons in the fire, like I always do, and you don't know what's going to stick. You have no idea. So I'm working on a couple of TV series that I just have in development. Will anybody pick them up or buy them? I don't know, but I'm working on it. I still am doing a radio show, which is great. I'm the co-host at AM 640. It's called The Dating and Relationship Show, Sunday nights with Laura Bellotta. So that's great. I do, every... It's
So it's like a relationship advice show?
Yeah. I'm the old married one, and Laura's the dating expert.
Oh,
so,
yes.
We have guests on. It's really interesting, and I get a real kick out of it. And I fill in a bit here and there, so that's fun. But I don't have the work of obtaining the guests and making sure all the social media is done and promoting the show. Like everything falls on her shoulders, so it's kind of easy for me.
Right. Well, you've done that work, right? In the past. Quick question and side note, what is your relationship advice? Like, how long have you been married for?
Oh gosh, 23 years.
23 years.
And
so
together 3 years before that.
What's the secret?
Find the right guy.
Oh, okay. Find the right guy.
I dated a lot. I used to enjoy dating, and then I decided I wanted to settle down. I wanted to have children, and you have to manifest it. You have to see it. You have to. I don't know.
And your husband obviously sounds very, very supportive of all of your endeavors, and feels equal, I guess. Or I don't know. Some people say it's not about being equal. It's about, when their cup isn't full, you help fill it, and when your cup isn't full, they help fill it. It's not about it always being the exact same at the exact same time. And obviously careers take different trajectories. And
you have to manage expectations. Like, I cannot expect, he's a business guy, I can't expect him to come to every single fashion event. That's not his thing. So we kind of divide and conquer a bit that way, and that's fine. And then we have our commonality.
I was reading something, maybe it was when you were on the show, it was probably some magazine article, and it was about, you had mentioned, I guess, maybe at times feeling like the trophy wife a little bit, or people putting that label on you.
Me as the trophy wife, which is like, how long do you have to be married to get over that, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I was accused of that, but what can I do? People are going to say whatever they're going to say, and let them talk. And
let them
just
say
rolled
it.
Right off.
And do you kind of just view those things like, I'll just prove it in other ways, like in all the other things that I'm up to? Like, I'm out here hustling, I'm doing my own thing, my husband's not here at fashion events, and is that kind of like your, middle finger to everybody who either doubted you or felt like you were less than what you really are?
Yeah. Well, I'm still here, and I'm still relevant, and a lot of that is driven from within. So, I don't define myself by Housewives by any matter. I don't define myself by any one thing in my career. I define myself by, my integrity and who I am.
By the whole picture. Looking back on this obviously very successful career and life, was there like one big failure that you feel is an important story to share because it's about that tenacity, it's about overcoming something that's really hard, or a big disappointment, like you didn't get something that you really wanted? Does anything come to mind that you might be able to share where you say, like, I overcame this, and so no matter what you guys are going through at home, if you're watching or listening to this, like, people have hard times, and this is how I kind of overcame it.
I don't know career-wise, because like I said, I would always just have so many irons in the fire that, one of them would eventually go somewhere and the rest of them would just sort of fade away or go on the back shelf. But just on a more personal level, as we age, we tend to have older parents and our kids are growing, and you're in that sandwich zone. And I really defined myself in that zone. And then my dad passed in 2018, but I still had my mom. And the reason I was working with a CNIB in particular is because my mom was visually challenged. and through circumstances and stroke and a bunch of things throughout her life. So losing her a year ago this week it was just the biggest readjustment ever. And it's interesting because all of a sudden, like people say, oh, I felt like an orphan when my parents died. And I would be like, aha, like how weird. But then you get this feeling like I honestly feel like I have been somehow catapulted forward in the timeline of life. And I look at things differently and I look backwards differently, and I was able to help clear the noise from everything I was just rushing, always trying to do and always trying to be and trying to, make everybody happy. Now it's like, okay, it is kind of about me. I guess it's my turn now, and how can I best serve my family and my community and these organizations that I've chosen to support.
Do you wish you had come to that conclusion earlier, or do you think that's a natural progression?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So it's a little both. Like, people kind of have to go through it one way or another.
Yes. And, losing my mom was a huge thing, but some people might have a cancer diagnosis or just that aha moment where they wake up and they decide to make a big change in their life that's going to affect them positively and therefore everyone surrounding them.
Wow. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I always like to close my show with asking an open-ended question. And so hopefully I don't stump you too much, but is there anything that I haven't touched on that you feel like is an important part of your story that you'd like to share? Again, viewers and listeners, small business owners, realtors, women trying to figure out what to do next in their lives. Is there anything that you'd kind of like to leave as a tip or advice or an anecdote to maybe help inspire them just to make that next move?
I would say don't be afraid and believe in yourself because you're stronger than you think. I think a lot of people just don't give themselves the credit that they deserve, and be kind to yourself and don't compare yourself.
Don't compare yourself to others. We at our training company, we always tell people to put their blinders on because so often we can get distracted, right, by what other people are doing. You see success
or what
over
other
here,
people say on social media. It's like, forget it. I don't even. It doesn't faze me. Like somebody's like, oh, your eyebrows are too dark, or your hair's too dark, or your hair's too this, or your hair's too long. You shouldn't have long hair at this age. Like, people say the weirdest things.
right?
What difference does it make?
It's
Zero.
interesting. I actually think the fear is obviously we know that fear holds people back, but there's something about people are more afraid of the fear than the actual thing that they need to do, because if they actually put themselves online, they'll say, well, I'm scared that people are going to say something to me. But then as soon as someone says something, you realize it's not that bad. So it's like that fear of it is worse than the actual thing happening. Like, I've been made fun of online too. I'm sure you've heard it all, just your profile, like the amount of comments. I get one comment every now and then that's like, what is she wearing? Or like, she sounds like an idiot. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Oh, realtors are the devil, whatever. And you do realize you get over it. But you being such a public figure, I imagine that it's a lot all at once. And I think people are afraid that it's going to make them crumble.
But there's also a lot of positivity online. Like 99% of my comments are supportive. And I think that's just, if people are going to follow me, they're not going to get a bunch of drama. They're getting only positivity, and I think positivity always attracts positivity.
Yeah.
So, you can also use it the other way too, to support yourself and to lend
You focus
support
on
to
the
other
good
people.
things. I love that. People, if they want to get in touch with you or they want to learn more about you and everything that you're up to, is there a place that we should direct them to, a website, to your Instagram? Where would you like our viewers to go?
At joankellywalker.com is my website, which has recently been updated, which is good. Or Instagram is Joan Kelley Walker Official.
Okay. Guys, be sure to check her out. Joan, I really appreciate you taking the time to come visit little old me here today, and give your feedback and your obviously, open, candid conversation about your whole career and your whole journey. And I so much appreciate you being here today.
Lovely chatting with you. Thank you.
And thank you guys. We'll see you next time.